welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Bass Fishing for Noobs here on the Paddle and Fin podcast. I'm your host, Sean. Susie is prepping for a tournament, so she's going to miss tonight's show, but we wish her good luck in the tournament, and I'm sure she's going to crush it, and she'll be back with us next week, hopefully. But tonight, I'm going to fly solo, and one of the things that I really started doing to try and help me find guests is when I have a guest on, I'll talk to them after the show's over and just say, hey, do you have any idea of who I should talk to and what should I talk to them about? And so if you guys remember a week or two ago, we had Craig Dye on the show, and he is a wealth of knowledge about all things kayak fishing, one of the OGs of the sport, and definitely gave us a great interview and tons of juice. And so before I got off the air, ended the call with him, I picked his brain a little bit and said, who else should I have on, And he's like, well, there's a guy down here by me, total hammer. He's been like kicking butt in the tournaments. And so he gave me the name of Joe Gayton to reach out to. So I reached out to Joe and asked him if he would be willing to come on the show. And he was nice enough to accept. So welcome to the show, Joe.
How you doing? Good to be here,
man. Glad to be. Thanks for taking time out of your schedule. I know you also are prepping for a tournament too, so I appreciate you taking a little bit of time to step away from that just for a sec to, talk with us here tonight. Wanted to give you for the folks who don't know you, obviously Craig Dye endorsement is a pretty good endorsement for sure. But for anybody who's not familiar with you, why don't you let them know who you are, kind of where you're from, and maybe a little bit about your history in fishing and how you got into kayak fishing, how you got to be where you are today.
Sure. Name is Joseph Gayton. I go by G-Man in Georgia. Started kayak fishing probably around 2015. And I sit inside America 11. So I fished outside of work, after work, and started fishing on Lake Allatoona a lot. Putting in, and then kind of graduated from there. I got into a vibe kayak, moved to South Carolina for 3 years, I think, something like that. Started fishing some online events. I wasn't quite comfortable fishing live events simply because money was tight. And I just didn't want to go out there and just throw away money. I wanted to be able to work my way through the month and maybe come away with some money, But during that time, I was able to fish probably 20 to 30 days a month.
Wow.
And I fished all the time. I'd fish all night, work all day, and then do it again. So it gave me a lot of time to really learn stuff about largemouth and spots there. And then I eventually moved back to Georgia and started getting more into live events. I had some confidence from the little bit that I did fish in South Carolina. So I came down to Georgia and started fishing around with PSKA, Peak State Kayak Anglers. I fished with Georgia Kayak Fishing League and Real Crazy Kayak Fishing League, and I've been fishing with the Georgia Bass Nation here as well.
Okay, and what's your success been? I know Craig said you've been doing really well, and he spoke highly of you. So I was curious what your season has been like so far.
Yeah, 2 years ago I won the Angler of the Year for Real Crazy and Peach State in the same year.
Nice.
Last year I won the Angler of the Year for the Georgia Bass Nation here in Georgia. I have won numerous events, and I am happy and blessed to say that I have cashed a lot of checks, which helps fund my fishing endeavors. So I can't say it's really skill, because a lot of it I think is just luck. You just happen to just find the right spot, and boom, there they are, and they just bite. And when it's your time, you couldn't mess anything up. They're coming to the.
Well, I don't know. I feel like if you're doing consistently enough, then there's a little more than luck involved. But
Sure.
what kind of kayak did you say you're fishing out of now?
Now I have a Hobie PA 360-14.
Gotcha. I'm hoping to step up. I have an Outback right now, and I'm hoping to step up to the PA at some point, in the not too distant future. That's definitely on the horizon. But I'm a smaller guy. I'm only 5'8", and so the Outback fits me pretty well and does pretty much everything I need it to do. Would you say you're more of a lake guy than a river guy, or do you fish much moving water?
I love moving water. River is king. if the bite's good on the river, that's where I'm going. I'll take that PA 14 through some gnarly stuff. I try to break it. I don't take the drive out, just run it over and keep going. We
Yeah,
have
no,
the river here, and it's a great fishery.
that's awesome. I know I live about 50 minutes from the Susquehanna, so I spend a lot of time there. And when I first got the Hobie, everybody's like, "Oh my gosh, you're taking that on the river? You know, you're going to kill that." And 2.5 years of fishing pretty hard on the river and pretty consistently. And knock on wood, I haven't screwed up my drive yet. I mean, the kick up fins really do their job, and
Oh, yeah.
I've been lucky enough to still on my original fins and masts and all that fun stuff. I know quite a few of my friends who've bent masts and stuff, but luckily enough for me, I've managed to keep mine in pretty good shape. So
Absolutely, yeah. It's a game changer for the rivers if you don't have a motor.
yeah, yeah. How many of the events you fish allow motors? I know a lot of ours here around me don't allow motors. I know the main league the kayak anglers of Pennsylvania that I fish, they're still kind of human powered, so you can pedal, but they don't allow motors. But I know it's starting to get a push where even they're starting to consider it.
Yeah, all the trails around here allow motors. Besides when you go to Queen City, which I applaud Vinny for staying strong. Um, I like that. I just recently got a motor 2 months ago, and
Okay.
I just got a old hand me down. So that's it. I mean, I can pedal faster than that thing pushes me.
Right, right. That was one thing. We just had our annual meetup down at Dale Hollow, and I think I was one of the only hosts that didn't have a motor. But I think I held my own pedaling the Outback. I was able to keep up with the guys with the motors for the most part. I did get towed around a little bit when we were making super long runs, but I
Sure.
think for the most part, I was able to keep up with them pretty well. So I was pretty happy. Although a motor is another thing on my wish list that hopefully isn't super far away because I saw just firsthand experience there, paddling or going around Dale Hollow with how much of an advantage a motor can be too. So
Yeah,
hopefully that is
absolutely.
on my wish list. Oh, I know. Talking before the show, you mentioned that one of the techniques that has really you've really kind of used to your advantage and actually cashed quite a few checks on was the Neko rig, and you know for the longest time, the wacky rig was one of my go-to baits, my confidence baits. But the Neko rig, is somewhat similar
Yeah,
with the addition of I guess the nail weight or whatever you want to do to weight the end of it. But that's one thing that I never quite got the hang of. So I'm very interested to see, what you can tell me about that. Figured I'd start off with, what brought you to that and kind of where you started throwing it and how you first kind of found success with it.
sure. I don't really remember why I started throwing it. I think it was because I just love to fish fast, and it helps get the worm down there. Even though sometimes you use a lightweight, you gotta wait a little bit. But when they want a more subtle, a more finesse presentation, it's a way to go. I think even over a shaky head, because I can bring this thing through a lot of timber that I just haven't found a shaky head that'll come through it well yet. And I can fish a bigger worm as on the weight as opposed to a shaky head to where you're only allowed so big of a worm, and then you got to have an extra wide gap hook on the shaky head, and it becomes more of almost a power technique at that point. But
Gotcha.
yeah, I started fishing it, I believe, just before Lake Hartwell last year. I started throwing it a lot, and it it's really good around bed fishing. Because I like the hookup ratio on it because it's an open hook.
Hmm.
If you can keep that worm from rolling on that hook, sometimes you'll skip a wacky rig or something, and the worm will roll, and you get the fat part inside the bend of the hook.
Yep.
Um, if you kind of watch that and kind of watch the way you cast, you're going to have almost 100% hookup rate ratio with the Neko rig.
Gotcha. And so for the folks that don't know what a Neko rig is, let's break that down a little bit. It's usually a worm hooked in the middle. The hook is usually in line with the worm, correct? Now, do you
Yep.
do hook facing away from the head or towards the head? The
Away from.
opening.
Yep.
Okay. So
The bend towards
opening,
the tail.
gotcha. And then usually it's hooked somewhere in the middle, kind of wacky rig esque, if you will. And
Yep.
then generally some kind of weight in the front,
Yes.
in the nose.
Let's see, I have a hook here. I'll just go ahead and hook one up so everybody can follow along.
I'm gonna make you big here.
Sure. So we have a little O-ring here. I use size 10. You can use a bigger size, fatter worm. There's two types of worms that I like: the Daiwas and the Maxent. I always tend towards the purple colors, and Daiwas and the Mizu, I believe is what it is. You just want to put your worm in there. I put it, there's like a little, what they call an egg sac or something there.
Yep.
I put it at the top of the egg sac on all the worms. I don't go any lower because I want that hook up here so I have less of this. Because if you think about it, if you watch the fish when they eat it, they normally going to suck it in the middle. So you want that hook in the, to get as far back in their throat as possible.
Gotcha.
Uh,
And you mostly you're mostly using Senko style baits or like bigger stick bait kind of plastics?
Yep. 5 or 6 inch. Sometimes I go down to a 4. But I tend to use these two worms the most. I found the success rate because of the salt. I can get away with a lighter weight. That way it'll drop fast as well.
Gotcha.
So you just take your little Neko weight. This is an Eagle Claw 1/32, just a cheap weight because you are going to lose them. You'll shove it to the end there. Make sure it's nice and straight. And you can take some super glue. I suggest the blue one. The red's not that great. And just put a small dab on there just to hold the weight in. And then I use the G Finesse size 2, I believe it is, hooks by Gamakatsu. They have the little keepers on here, little small weed keepers. And then you always want to get some of the worm in there behind the O-ring. You always want to get some of that meat because that O-ring will slip. But if you get some of that worm in there, it'll last through a lot of cast.
Gotcha.
So that's what it looks like.
Okay. And so you usually how do you change your weights up depending on depth, or what causes you to use different weights?
Basically the wind. If I want to fish offshore a little deeper, say 15 to 20 feet, then I'll go to a bigger weight. These are just I think these are VMCs here. This is like a 3/16, and I got a 1/4 ounce. But I try to keep it lightweight. But if I'm kind of, you'll see fishermen come through with a 1/2 ounce jig on these docks. Just pitch it in there, let it fall, bump it a couple times, reel it up. So when I want to do that with a worm, I'll just throw on a bigger weight there. And, I can do basically the same thing with a different type of bait.
Gotcha. I was curious about that because I know you said you like to fish fast, and I, normally I would think of this as not the quickest, although adding the weight definitely, as opposed to throwing a weightless wacky rig where you're just waiting and waiting and waiting as it falls. I mean, that it's doing its thing, but it also takes a long time. And I actually started throwing weighted wacky rigs, because I kind of got impatient with the fall too, and still found success doing that. But the weight then is on the hook, and to me it makes it a little easier for them to throw it. It's not as I think the hookup ratio suffers a little bit when you do that, but I think that's where now would you going back to kind of where you throw this, like what says to you when you pull up to a spot, oh, this is going to be a good spot to throw the Neko? Like, is there something you're looking in particular for, like a certain water depth, or I know you mentioned about, you do really well with cover, like logs and laydowns, and, bringing it through that kind of stuff.
Sure. Well, I kind of let the conditions determine that. Of course, if it's bright and sunny, in the middle of the summer or getting to the summer, they're going to be under the docks. So, instead of a wacky rig, I want something that's going to fall a little faster. So I'll throw this underneath the dots. I'll skip it under there. But if you have conditions where it's kind of cool, it's kind of cold, like it's been right here on Lanier, they weren't biting anything moving today that I could find. But I picked up the Neko rig and was able to throw it on points, into brush, under docks, around rocks, and they were hitting it a lot better than anything else.
Gotcha.
It's really just conditional on the weather, the day, how it feels,
Gotcha. So you're kind of letting the fish tell you what they want, and
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Now, do you throw that on spinning gear, or you throw it on baitcaster? What's your rod and reel setup and your line?
No, I throw it on spinning reel. I have a cheap setup here, so for anybody that's trying to learn how to do it, this would be perfect for you. I think this is a $60 or $70 reel that you can get. It's a Daiwa Revros. It's a LT 3000. I like the bigger size reel instead of the 2500 because when you fill it up, it actually has a higher gear ratio. You could gain line a lot faster with that.
Gotcha.
I'm throwing it on an SLX rod, Shimano SLX. It's a 7-foot medium, extra fast. And it's got a lot of tip on it, so it's able to let me load the rod up and skip it really well. I'm able to actually set the hook with these hooks. I don't reel into the fish and lean. I actually set the hook with these, and so it's a good beginner setup for someone just learning. So that if they're not used to reeling down, they're used to snatching on them, they can still catch the fish.
Gotcha.
I'll run it with 15-pound braid. This isn't Sunline braid. I forget what's on here, but I like the high vis stuff. So if you can find some 15-pound Sunline high vis orange or yellow, something like that, and then I run it with a 10-pound Seaguar red label leader. I usually keep about 8 to 10 foot on there.
Okay. Oh, cool. And that I it's funny you say red line, because we were just having a argument about that down at the Dale Hollow meetup, and Sunline has a lot of people who love it, but I know a lot of people who actually aren't a fan of the red line for some reason, and it's weird that for every person I talk to that loves Seaguar, there's also 15 people I've heard of, that, oh, I can't stand red label, or but yet I was just reading today about a woman who caught a like 12-pound largemouth on 10-pound Seaguar red label fluoro, and it took her forever to land it, but she was able to land it without it breaking. So, it's got to be, somewhat good. It makes me wonder what people are doing with it that they don't like it, because I haven't noticed anything crazy about it, but
Yeah, it's nice. It does last pretty good. It's pretty abrasion resistant. I can pull fish over cables, over trees, through rocks, and it'll barely be hanging on, but the fish is in the net, and then it's cheap enough to where you can run through a spool if you want to, and then not have to worry about spending $30 on a spool of Invisex. You can spend $12-15 on a spool of red label. That'll be just fine.
Gotcha. Okay, so we kind of have an idea of what your rod and reel setup is like. How about retrieves? Like what's your normal cast? And then your retrieve back to the boat. What's that like?
Sure. You always want to make sure it hits the bottom. When I throw it out there, make sure it hits the bottom, and then I just kind of keep a slight bow in my line, and I'll pick up to where I get a little bit of tension on it, and I can feel the worm, and it's just a little bit of just small rod tip shakes. You don't want to overwork the worm. You want to try and maintain bottom contact the entire time. For my optimal retrieve anyway. You can work it different ways. There's guys out there that when they throw it out there, it hits bottom, they pull it really far, get it off the bottom, and let it flutter back down, because of that fall sometimes will trigger the bites. But for me, the most successful is just kind of just wiggling it along the bottom.
So it's kind of like a drag and wiggle at the same time?
Yep, pretty much.
Then if you feel the height bite at all, then you're hook setting, you're swinging for the fences?
Yep, that's it. Sometimes you won't feel a bite, because you don't shake it the whole time. You'll shake it a little bit like this, and then you'll pause, make sure the worm's on the bottom, reel up some slack. And then sometimes you won't even feel the bite. It'll just be pressure, and you can just lean into them, just lay into them there.
Gotcha. Okay, and I know you mentioned fishing it offshore. Like, how deep will you go with fishing it? And are you finding fish with like a fish finder, or are you more like exploring with it?
Now I have an old Lowrance Hook 7, so all I got is 2D. And if I mark something, even if I'm in like 40 foot of water, I've caught fish on this, and 40 foot of water on the bottom, you just drop it down to them. So that's about, if I'm going over a point or a hump and I mark some fish, I can turn around, I can cast it out there a little bit, or I can drop on them, kind of like a drop shot. You can use it multiple different ways, but I've caught them as deep as 40 foot on this thing.
And when you're going for the deeper fish like that, are you usually bumping the weight up a little bit, or are you just letting it fall?
Yeah, I will, because you don't want to sit there and wait forever for this thing to get down there. I usually have 2 or 3 rigged up, not on the rod, but I have them rigged up with the O-rings and the weight sitting there beside my seat, so that I can just take the hook off and hook it onto it, depending on where I see the fish or where I'm fishing.
That makes a lot of sense. So you have a couple different weights tied up, like rigged already, and that way you can just pop them on the line.
Right.
And
Yep.
Gotcha. Okay, yeah, that's a good tip, especially in a tournament situation where you don't want to, when you want to kind of be able to switch relatively fast, between your different weights and stuff. So that's a good tip. Cool. Trying to think of what else I would ask about this technique. I know you mentioned you're want to feel bottom contact, and I've heard it described as counting rocks. Is that basically what you're doing? You're just dragging it, wiggling it, feeling it, feeling that bumping over the bottom.
Yep, that's it. Because this doesn't have like a head on a jig or a shaky head, so you basically just have this plastic here. It'll come through a lot of small crevices. As long as you don't snatch on it or pull it really fast over a limb, it's not going to roll. And these small little weed guards, they work better than you think that they will. And it'll come through just about anything you can put it in. The only thing about these G-finesse hooks is these weed guards, they'll get worn out whenever you catch a fish, and they'll break off. So you can break them both off, and you can use it as a wacky rig hook or a drop shot hook in the future if you want to. So you can save some extra money there.
Gotcha. That makes a lot of sense. That was one thing that I kind of really started doing with the wacky rigs that I was throwing, is I just because of where I was fishing it, it was very grassy, and I found that the weed guards did help a little bit to keep the hook clean. I was still having to, clean off every once in a while, but it did help with that. Is this something that you fish around grass a lot, or that's kind of you're looking more for wood cover?
Now you can fish it in grass. I fished it in Seminole through the grass. It does come through the grass pretty well with those weed guards, especially the high hydrilla. You don't want it around like algae stuff, because that stuff will get on anything. We just had a tournament on the Burton chain up here, and I fished Lake Seed, which is full of hydrilla, and it's got a little bit of milfoil in there. And I'm able to throw this in some pretty thick stuff and pull it through, and not have to worry about the hook catching a piece of grass.
Gotcha. Okay. Okay. I'm trying to think of anything else. Any other tips with it that you can think of off the top of your head, or just trying to think of anything I missed. We talked about where you would throw it. We talked about the reels, the lure, like what baits you use. Do you ever throw it with anything besides a stick bait, or most? I know you said that's kind of
I actually got a bellows lure out in the car that I'm going to use tomorrow. They come with their own Neko rig peg that looks pretty cool. You stick it through it, and it's got a hole that you put your hook into. So those are really cool. But for the most part, this is how I normally fish it, just with a worm or with some kind of thing like that. It's really good around bed fishing as well, because you can switch out the weights, and if you use a heavy enough weight, it'll stay put, and you can use a lot of shake, kind of like a drop shot. but this is on the bottom in like it's touching their beds where they would lay their eggs and not off the bottom like a drop shot would be. So, with the open hook too, you got a good hookup ratio with that.
And I would think as opposed to like a shaky head where the weight is actually kind of more like a ball on the bottom that's gonna, find its way into crevices and get stuck. Since the weight is pretty much enclosed in the worm, it's not gonna snag weight wise as much. I know, yeah, that's one good thing you mentioned too about the super glue because the few times that I did do it, I did find myself losing that nail weight quite a bit. So that's a good tip to put a little dab of super glue on the top of there just to keep that in there.
Yeah, because you'll lose it with the fish coming up slinging the worm. You'll lose a lot of worms that way too. There's no way around that really. But you're skipping under docks, you're hitting floats, and it's just hitting that nail weight. And it'll fall out. So you got to be aware when you notice your worm falling a little slower. Just reel it up and just check. Just kind of squeeze it if it's totally inside the worm, encased in there, just to make sure it's still in there.
Yeah, yeah, no, that's definitely a good tip because I'm sure it's not nearly effective. Then you're basically fishing a wacky rig at that point.
Yep, pretty much. And if you're using these bigger weights that have the nails that go inside, but the mushrooms outside, and you get caught in a rock, the good thing about this is they just pull right out of the worm. You don't lose your whole worm. You don't use the O-ring. You don't lose the hook. So you're not losing as much money.
Yeah, that's kind of nice too. I know the ones when I had tried it, I was using a Z-Man worm, and they have their own version, like almost like a mushroom head that sticks in the end. And I was having pretty good luck with that staying in there. But again, like you said, that when it's exposed like that, when there's some weight outside of the worm, it does lend itself a little bit more to catching on things and getting
Yeah.
stuck. So, but it's kind of like a drop shot in that way that if the weight snags, then you can still usually get the rest of the rig back without losing
Right.
everything. So yeah, that's cool. And I know you've talked about fishing it like, that it's really good for bedding fish. And I could totally see that because if you're just working that through a bedding area, the fish is going to get pretty ticked off watching something nose its way through their bedding area. So that totally makes sense why that would work. Are you, when it comes to shallow areas, are you more sight fishing at that point, or are you pretty much just going off feel still?
Yeah. I usually stay pretty shallow anyway. So if I'm fishing parallel to the bank and I'm always looking in the water. If I'm seeing fish swim, then I'll know, I need to slow down a little bit or decrease my weight. So it falls almost like a wacky rig, but I can still fish it pretty fast. And then, and I'll know to get off the bank a little bit more of a diagonal cast so that I'm not going right over the top of them. And I can stay off a little bit and I can see them swimming and I can, if I see them, I can reel it up, pitch the way they're going, and maybe they'll hit it with 9 out of 10. They're not going to, they've already seen you, but
Gotcha. Gotcha. Cool. And I know, okay. I know you mentioned you're a big fan of purple. Do you find that just in your area is what works best, or I would think that with this being a somewhat slower presentation, like natural would be good, as opposed to like the super bright or colors. Although depending on your water clarity, I'm sure that plays into that.
It does, but I tend not to care. I guess purple around here is just a hot color for some reason. I don't know really what it mimics, if it's close to like a dark earthworm or something. I know these Max Sense, they turn almost a muscadine color in the water. These are a little bit more subtle because they're more of a lighter purple. The Daiwas, but I throw them in clear water. I'm throwing them on Lanier today. The spots didn't seem to mind. The largemouth at Lake Seed, which is super clear, they don't seem to mind. It's just I don't know what it is about purple. I just have confidence in purple. It's something I have confidence with, something I'm going to throw. And confidence is key in anything that you're doing. If you don't have confidence, then you might as well put it down until you do.
Absolutely, 100%. And it's kind of weird. I know I've noticed in the lakes by me, which generally aren't super clear. That I've had a lot of luck with purple baits. Like I throw like a peanut butter and jelly um, lizard, like a Zoom lizard, and I've had a lot of luck with that. And really tried a whole bunch of other colors in that lizard, and for some reason, that purple, like the PBJ, the purple and brown, really, for whatever reason, in that like slightly off color water, really does well. And I can't place my finger on it because I haven't seen anything in the water that closely resembles that color, so I don't know what it is or if it's just a contrast that they're picking up, but it definitely is a color that works well for me in that kind of water. So
Yeah, I can see that.
cool.
Contrast is a lot of stuff because I know on the rivers around here, even though it's clear, I'll throw uh, a jackhammer with a chartreuse bottom on it, and I'll put a complete chartreuse fluke on it, and them spots will just hammer it. I don't know if they're more sight fishing like smallmouth or that those sight feeders, but I can throw bright chartreuse in some clear water, and they don't care. They're going to eat it.
Yeah, that's kind of how the smallies on the Susquehanna are. When I'm on the river, chartreuse is one of my favorite colors. Uh, I use chartreuse at blackback um, crankbait, and my chatterbaits are usually either white or chartreuse. And my spinner baits a lot of times have some kind of white or chartreuse in them. It's just a really good color for me on the river, especially.
Yep, absolutely.
Cool. Awesome, man. Well, I know I want to be respectful of your time, so uh, I wanted
Well, yeah, my
to.
wife's calling me.
Well, again, I definitely will let you go here. I appreciate you coming on. Definitely, some great info. I can't wait to get out and try the Neko rig. Where are you fishing tomorrow? What's your tournament?
Lake Lanier is a co-event with Georgia Bass Nation and Peach State Kayak Anglers.
Awesome, awesome. And is that a 2-day event or just a single day?
It's just a single day that this time. Last year it was a 2 day event. This time it's just a 1 day.
Okay, I couldn't remember if I knew I'd talked to Craig a little bit about where he thought you might be fishing, and he mentioned that. So I know I think Susie is fishing a 2-day event this weekend because she mentioned being busy both tomorrow or tonight, tomorrow, and Sunday. So I wish her luck too, and good luck to you tomorrow. And oh, for the anybody who wants to follow along with you, what's your social media?
Facebook is just Joseph Gayton, I think. Instagram is Joseph G-Man Gayton. On YouTube, which there's no new videos on there, is Green Gorilla Hunter.
What was the YouTube?
Green Gorilla Hunter.
Okay. And we will put notes to all these or links to all these in the show notes as well. So if you guys want to check out Joe's stuff on Instagram or on the social media, definitely check him out. Give him some follows. And how about sponsors? Who do you got lined up?
Sure. For Her is officially my only sponsor. It's For Her Outdoor Apparel, local company here out of Cumming, Georgia. They're actually the main sponsor of a Fundamentals of Fishing event tomorrow at War Hill and Lake Lanier. There's going to be 200 new people there. They're giving away rods and reels, tackle, feeding everybody. So it's going to be a cool event for them. But on people that I really like is Dugout Bait and Tackle. Of course, they really support the kayak anglers around here.
Definitely, definitely a cool shop there. And I remember when I first when Craig told me about you, I was looking checking out your Facebook and stuff, and I saw a lot of stuff about the For Her tackle or For Her event, and that seems really cool. And especially our show's geared towards a little bit more towards beginning anglers. That seems like a great place kind of event to go and check out, and kind of, if you're just getting started, a great place to go and learn. Kind of get your feet wet a little bit.
Absolutely. Yep. They're going to be instructors there helping them, little seminars. So they're going to have fun.
Awesome. Well, guys, definitely go on and check that out. Unfortunately, this is going to air after that happens, but you definitely guys can take a look at their page and keep an eye out for future events because it seems like a really cool company and doing a lot of good stuff for anglers in general. So very cool. Well, Joe, oops, sorry about that. Thanks for coming on tonight, man. I love, thank you so much for taking the time out of your schedule. I know, definitely know what tournament prep is like, and you're getting stuff ready for the event, the fundamentals of fishing event too. So got a lot going on, but I appreciate you taking the time to come on, man.
Yeah, I lost audio. I don't know on that last call. I'm sorry. I
No,
can't
you're
hear
good,
you.
man. Okay. Well, thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate it.
All right.
Good luck
Thank you for
tomorrow.
having me.
Yep, no problem. And I will talk to you later. Okay. All right. Thank you, guys. That this has been another episode of Bass Fishing for Noobs here on the Paddle and Fin podcast, where we bring you the techniques, the tips, trip. Ugh, I'm going to start over. So we thank Joe for coming on tonight, guys. Be sure and check out his social media, and the sponsors will put the link in the show notes for her event that's coming up tomorrow, and that way you guys can check out the company and see what they're all about. And definitely go give Joe some follows on his social media, and maybe go out and hit the water with a Neko rig and see what you can pull in. I know we have the May Bass Fishing for Noobs tournament up and running. We had a good showing in the April tournament. I was lucky enough to get second in that. Although I just can't seem to get first place. I was close this month. So I love that you guys are challenging me, and definitely helps keep me focused and keeping me wanting to get out and hit the water so I can try and keep up with you guys. But you guys are doing an awesome job. So thank you so much for the support in that, and for the support of the show in general. If you guys have anything you want covered, any techniques or topics that you'd like to have covered, you can go on Facebook and Bass Fishing for Noobs, or the Paddle and Fin Noobs group, and drop it there, or just email us, or check for links in the show notes, and just reach out to us and let us know if you have a guest that you'd love to hear from, or any technique or topic that you'd like covered. So again, this has been the Bass Fishing for Noobs podcast here on the Paddle and Fin podcast, where we bring you the techniques, the tricks, and the tips to help you rip more lips. Until next week, guys, have a good night, and we'll catch you later.